how a circular economy can be a source of growth and what the transition from linear to circular would mean in terms of profits, jobs, prosperity and resilience is a question being asked by political and business leaders globally. And as the world responds to the COVID-19 pandemic and plots a recovery that sets us on a new course, the answer to this question has never been more important.
Has this pandemic slowed down the course of the circular economy, or has it maybe also in some ways accelerated our understanding of at least the need for a circular economy?
I think there's been this massive rethink. People have stopped, people have reflected in a way that has been almost forced on us. And that's people from individuals right through to senior politicians. And I think there's been this real focus on when we build back after this pandemic, because we will be restructuring things. Things have changed probably forever. What do we focus on? And there's been a significant increase, I believe, in circular economy activity. And I think we have to ask ourselves, what do we want to grow? What are we trying to build back post-pandemic? And I think circular economy gives that answer, and it's restorative, it's regenerative. It's about moving away from that extractive value to one around creating value.
Let me ask you a dicey question. Who are the losers of a circular economy?
Who
will lose from that transition to a circular economy? Or is everybody winning from it?
Business as usual does not work. Everybody loses if we continue with business as usual. We have an extractive economy. We rely on the race to the bottom. So if you're a company manufacturing a product, you generally compete on price. At the very high end, it's quality, but often it's price. Can you produce this for less money? Can you make more profit? That's a race to the bottom. That's never going to work in the long term. That's about extracting every little bit of value that we can on the way to the bottom. We need to turn that on its head so that you have this generation of value whereby you're racing to the top. So you're competing on price, but in a different way. You build a circular model, you can offer that for less money. That's a very different price parity, rather than trying to race to the bottom, trying to produce the cheapest product. So those cheap products fall off the end of the production line within a linear system, but within a circular economy, you're building a better product that's restorative, regenerative, the materials go back in, the system changes. Now often it's high end and it's costly to shift to some of those models, but we need to look at the entire system and change the whole system so that then those circular models compete on price. So yes, there will be losers. Those that stick with the linear system in the race to the bottom, they will be losers. But those that rethink their model, that will be where the winners lie.
Shouldn't most of the emphasis now go into these implementation risks and into the policy narratives to make it happen?
If you can get that consortia, as we have with the plastics packaging sector, in agreement, this is where they're moving to, that makes it much clearer for the policymakers to then bring policy forward to help that transition, which then helps the investors to invest in that transition because everyone has this common direction. What we've seen in the past is many of these companies have had 100 innovations in 100 directions which don't add up to a solution, whereby it is you go off over here or you go off over here, all with absolutely the best intentions, but that won't change the system. To change the system, you need everyone to agree this is where we're moving towards. It's these materials. It's this distribution model. It's working towards getting products to people in a different way. Then you have a very different conversation with policymakers. You have a different conversation with your consumers, and that helps the whole system to shift. The systemic change has different elements within it. It has the consumer within it, but most importantly, it also has policy within it. If policy agrees that we need to build back better, we need to look at what growth for the future looks like. We need to understand what good growth is compared to extracting a little bit of extra growth out of that race to the bottom of the linear system. That's a very different conversation. So what is good growth? How do we incentivize good growth? Then you end up with the policy following suit. You end up with finance following suit because of the policy set that makes it much easier for that company to shift towards that circular regenerative system.
So you're really talking about circular economy as a project for society as a whole, and the green space and the well-being is super important. And Chile has been the first country to put circular economy explicitly in its nationally determined contribution towards the Paris Agreement, bearing in mind you were the host of COP25 and still very much involved in the process at the moment. You've been very active promoting that notion and the link that circular economy can contribute to climate change mitigation. How did that translate into the roadmap process, and what do you think it means for you as a country?
Well, this is very important because 55% of the emission reductions that we need to be carbon neutral come from changing to clean energies. But the other 45% of the reductions that we need come from changing the way we produce and we consume. In that sense, circular economy should be an important part of the climate agenda. We understand and we are convinced of that. That is why Chile put in our NDC, our circular economy commitments. And we are putting that as well in a very strong place in our long-term climate strategy. That is the way of how we become carbon neutral. As presidency of COP25, we are strongly pushing and calling for countries to integrate these two agendas and put in their NDCs and long-term climate strategy concrete commitments in circular economy.
The transition will have winners and losers, and private finance is built on the ability to pick the winners. So what can we infer from the early movements of some of the major players in the finance sector?
What role do you think investors such as yourselves can play in this process? And am I right in thinking we're still at an early stage of what's likely to be a really comprehensive transformation?
Yes, I think we are. But the good news is that even in the last few years, we've seen the emergence of funds focused on the circular economy, including those managed by BlackRock. And we definitely see an opportunity to drive capital towards these solutions. I think if you're an investor who's focused on long-term value creation, and you live on a planet with finite resources, you have a vested interest in the circular economy.
I think there's been a real shift of people not just seeing circular economy as something that in many people's minds invokes, that must mean less growth, right? If we're using stuff over and over again and we're producing less stuff, that must be less growth. People are now understanding that can actually be an incredibly compelling growth opportunity and therefore investment opportunity. So we've been very excited to see the progress there.
That's so interesting. And it sounds like the conversations with clients are sort of rapidly becoming increasingly sophisticated.
Absolutely. More sophisticated, more really trying to understand not only sort of what is the output, but really how does plastic waste reduction and a circular economy way of thinking become a part of the business value drivers of a corporation or of an investment strategy. And if you really, I think people are much more interested in things where companies are saying, we are going to rethink our design, rethink our supply chain, rethink our end of life capture, rather than saying we're going to host a lovely cleanup or we're going to write big checks towards some lovely cause. It's really about how do you use your business as a driver to create more value and also to create investment benefits of lower cost of materials, lower cost of waste, et cetera.
Supply chains are where things get real. Natural resources, trade, jobs, technology, and changing customer demands all collide. Today, these are linear flows of materials and resources crisscrossing the globe on one-directional journeys. But through a circular economy lens, what will they look like tomorrow?
Are there any practical examples of things that you at H&M have already started to either test or pilot or take action on to set yourselves up for this future supply chain?
Yeah, but great question. We've been on this for quite many years. So everything from, of course, collecting garments in the majority of our stores worldwide, using our physical network also as an initial part of a reverse supply chain. We have a number of investment in the recycled area and our driving and owning a couple of companies within the circular fiber industry. We're doing a lot of work now together with other partners in the sorting part. How do you do that in the most efficient way? How can you use connectivity of products to be able to load them with data and have a better insight on what is coming back? So there is a lot of time and curiosity going into this area. And of course, a major enabler is also making sure that you start designing and product develop for a circular industry, so that your products from the beginning is already easy to dismantle and recycle, making it possible. And that's actually the starting point. So I think every single part of our company and then of our industry will be part in a successful transformation of this supply chain.